They called it V15, and it sort of like ignited this big dispute about like intention and grades, and people really wanted to derive like a truth from the whole situation.
This is Climbing Gold. Tell us about box therapy and what happened with that boulder.
Yeah, so I did box therapy in July 2023. I'd been living in Colorado for a couple months. And I've actually done like 3 or 4 summers in Colorado, bouldering in the Alpine there. And I kind of came into the summer with the intention of doing it. And I actually did it relatively quickly, and had, yeah, a pretty amazing experience. Just hiking up there at 6 miles in, and having this really like intentional, focused time, really deep in the Alpine for me, at least, pretty deep to be bouldering. I did a few sessions that were like kind of completely alone. And so it was this feeling of like self-sufficiency, and almost like survival in the mountains that was pretty rare and unique, at least in my bouldering experience. I think it also like kind of catalyzed this feeling that I could actually be a lot more adventurous and a lot more ambitious, in my bouldering. And I don't know if that's really something that like most high level boulders like ever really get to experience. Oftentimes, it can feel like the harder you boulder, the less adventure there really is. And the more like focused you are on whatever roadside boulder is next.
It's funny you say that though, because I've actually always kind of had a personal feeling that the more elite you get as a boulder, the closer you get to being an ultra runner or something. You know, it's like because all these like hardcore boulders are freaking walking all over the place looking for boulders, and you're talking about 12 miles of hiking to go try one rock in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah,
And you're just like by yourself out there doing solo sessions. I was like, in a way, that's kind of crazy. You know, it's like not that many people do that in their climbing experience. That's like pretty hardcore. And it's just
yeah,
interesting because so many people make fun of bouldering. It's like, oh, you know, bouldering, it's like so light duty. But I'm kind of like, I don't know. That's as adventure as it gets in climbing when you hike 6 miles in the middle of nowhere, try as hard as you can by yourself until you're totally exhausted, and then stagger back to your car. You're like,
totally.
that's a big outing.
It's yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people do end up there with their bouldering of just like, oh, actually walking further is fine and maybe adds to the experience. But it does feel a little bit silly to like walk 6 miles, like kind of like prep for a big alpine day and then just like go sit under a boulder and like
And
I don't know.
crimp as hard as you can for
Yeah,
18 seconds,
exactly.
and then look at your tips for like 20 minutes, and then try it again.
Exactly.
But so at the time, what did it mean for you? You know, how did it feel to be the first woman to climb V16 when you did box therapy?
Yeah, I think maybe like naively, I felt like pretty unprepared for like what meaning people would derive from that. I think when one is like sort of amongst the scene or like kind of in the high level bouldering game, it can feel like the grades actually become a bit more arbitrary. Like everybody's kind of like talking amongst themselves, and to the general public, like V16 really feels like something different. And I think naively I wasn't expecting this to like feel like as big a moment as it became. And I was like much more low key, I think, 2 years ago. And it was just kind of this moment of stepping into the limelight.
Yeah, and
That
so what happened?
So okay, so what happened? So I did the boulder in July 2023. In like September 2023, I went back to California and was like, okay, I think I should probably share about this. And made my Instagram post, which I guess is breaking the news these days.
There was no
And
video or anything.
I mean, I had video, but I didn't post a video. And yeah, and then funny enough, I had been sort of talking to Brooke and Shawn Raboutou when I was in Colorado that summer, but they were not there when I was there. We just were ships in the night. So we hadn't actually tried it together, but had just been discussing logistics in beta. And so there was also kind of this interesting moment where like I knew that they were trying and I kind of thought everybody else like knew that they were trying. I don't know. The timing was weird because then Brooke and Shawn did it maybe a couple of weeks after I had made my Instagram post and they called it V15 and it sort of like ignited this big dispute about like intention and grades and people really wanted to derive like a truth from the whole situation like has a woman climbed V16 or no like what is the answer when I think yeah looking back truth is not so binary and maybe we see that more like I don't know. I think there's a lot of examples where like truth feels like it is on a spectrum and there are multiple truths that can exist at the same time. Not really thinking in a climbing lens right now, but yeah.
And so how'd that feel for you? I mean, basically like stirred up a bunch of drama. Like
Yeah.
how did that affect your experience having climbed the route?
Yeah, it was interesting because I had such a good experience with the boulder and I felt kind of like empowered by the boulder actually in my own climbing. Like it was sort of like, wow, I like walked out to this random piece of rock 6 miles in and like I did that for myself was sort of like the feeling I had. And then and people really wanted, I think, to like push this narrative that I had done it to be the first woman to climb V16 and then had like suffered the consequences from taking that on as an ambition, which was absolutely like not the narrative that I had in my mind. And so it was just kind of my first moment of like having something having like a public opinion pushed onto me and it felt in some ways like I felt sad that people felt like there was like malicious intent from like Brooke and Shawn and because I had never like felt that myself from them and I think for me there was just a process of like coming to terms with it being okay that public opinion differs from my own opinion of other people and my own opinion of myself and like being okay with creating a separate experience from like the experience that people had took from me sharing and they really ran with it and that's okay.
Yeah, so now 2 years later, looking back on it, does it change your experience with the route? Like how do you feel about the whole journey?
Yeah, I think for a while I had a pretty like bad relationship with boulder in particular. Not like, you know, there's like juju around certain areas or boulders, but I mean, it sort of feels like there's a little bit of like lore in my mind about certain pieces of rock. And now I feel like grateful for the experience, having come like all the way to the end with it. And like it is actually super crazy that I walked so many miles and like was just like committing myself to like go and do that boulder. And like I feel like impressed with myself for having taken on that as a project, which I think is like closer to where I felt having in 2023 having just done the boulder and not really had a backlash about it.
Mhm.
So I feel pretty good about it right now.